It is the fourth month of your unemployment. You have made hundreds upon hundreds of efforts in building and rebuilding resumes, submitting applications through various sources, and luckily have managed to bag a few interviews. Things might be looking up for you, if only you weren't living in the year of 2026. You visit the first interview at a large grocery store near your home, in which you confront a small Vietnamese woman as your interviewer. She does not speak English very well and speaks to you behind a glass barrier in which she asks you several questions. Of course, you answer to the best of your ability and ask for a follow up within the week. On the second interview, in the warehouse just next to the grocery market, you meet with a tall Caucasian woman, your interviewer. She greets you, and you sit and proceed with the interview. Again, you answer to the best of your ability, and you wrap up the day securing two interviews, and your third is within the week. Later that week, you check your follow up with the grocery store and confront your interviewer to see if you had landed the job, in which she proclaims, in a difficult Vietnamese accent, that you did not meet the qualifications for the job. You cut your losses, and by the next day, you have your next follow up. You confront your interviewer, and she awkwardly scurries away with another employee telling you that she does not believe that they followed up with your hiring process. All is not yet lost, however, as you do have an interview on the current day. Another warehouse, which you had worked at before. You arrive at the warehouse, in which you encounter your old boss, which excitedly gives the interviewer a tip to possibly promote your chances. You wait your turn and finally start the interview. It is this time hosted by a short Mexican woman. You follow through and provide an impressive interview, along with holding previous experience at this warehouse. The interviewer assures you that you may very well be hired, and she looks forward to your employment. You follow up at the end of the week. You confront an employee that stood in on her day off, and she tells you that they have not chosen to go forward. Frustrated and exhausted from the hundreds of failed attempts to land a job, while being repeatedly humiliated, you choose to go back to those same workplaces to see if you notice a change in the employee roster. On your first location, you find, through employees, that the Vietnamese employer had took in her three granddaughters. On the second location, you find the employees unwilling to speak with you. And on the third, you find out through your old boss that two Indians had been hired onto the new team. Your immediate reaction is a bad taste in your mouth. You know something is wrong, but are unable to successfully articulate what exactly it is. Of course, you are immediately concerned with your economic hardships, being unable to find work, and also being unable to apply for certain welfares. With this, you are heading furthermore for a disaster, as your credit cards max out and your vehicle falls into disrepair. It is on this story basis that I wish to identify the evident issues, provide an accurate diagnosis, and an effective cure. There are major economic and social issues tormenting the opportunities of the modern white man, heavily overshadowed by popular social issues associated with minority groups in the United States, but also leaving their issues unrepresented through years-long social exile by corporations and popular media. The first issue here is fault to few, but worth mentioning nonetheless. The aged workforce. As it stands, the average age of workers within the U.S. is somewhere between 40 and 43, while the average worker age of the 60s to the 80s was between 34 and 35. This may not sound like much immediately, but what it represents is a nearly 10-year work experience advantage in a shrinking workforce, with only 3.5% of the white male population aged 18 to 24 in the workforce, while 25% of the population are those same white males. This indicates two things. 66% of young white males are in the labor force, while 44% of those same men are enrolled in university. Ideally, this would be the case if that same population was not sidelined on a 15 to 19% margin, having no work or education due to social conditions that I will speak on now. The second issue here is immigration. Immigrants to the United States are highly sought after, particularly for their willingness to work a lower wage. As migrant populations rise, there begins to be a disproportionate employment rate based upon the immediate assumption that employers will pay them less and for the second-hand language capabilities, which are not effectively provided by the American school system. This creates a further disadvantage upon our young population, in which they are outcompeted by a workforce that on average holds anywhere between 20 and 30 years of experience over them, on top of being sidelined by migrant labor population groups, which is given the benefit of steady employment for a lower wage without the young population ever even being given the chance to negotiate for that same lower wage. On the third issue, during DEI, which some companies still follow, this was even worse for the young population, as they were further afflicted by not only the same issues as I listed before, but also a preferential hiring system based upon the aforementioned diversity and equity. This led to every demographic of whites broadly suffering, except for the second-hand language populations like the Polish and Italians, which in those majority-speaking areas, due to the demand of those same speakers, kept steady employment. Recently, we are also facing a new hiring crisis, that in which many of the men graduating from high school with trades such as HVAC and welding, and college students with degrees in tech have been massively neglected from being able to find work. This is mostly due to the fact that such trade and tech jobs have been massively promoted, leading to there being too many of those same workers trying to find space in the job market. Perhaps worse is the surge of Indian H-1B workers, usually with fake degrees, that have outcompeted the younger population due to previously mentioned migrant hiring biases. In the trades too, industries have begun outsourcing work to countries like the Dominican Republic and Colombia, providing the same consequences. In addition to this, the same workers oftentimes are lower quality, but not enough to offset the long-term benefit of keeping their low-cost employment. You may have noticed before that I did not make the same statistical argument as in the aged workforce section. This is due to the fact that I meant to clearly and concisely give an idea of the employment conditions for the young generation, not to make a statistical argument regarding all of the collective issues. Doing so would offset the benefit of verbally articulating this important argument and fill your mind with boring statistics that you already likely know of or that you can find online with ease. Now that that is cleared up, we have diagnosed the issues and must now try to calibrate where exactly this leads us. I predict that the sidelined population, along with the mass post-college unemployment along with crippling debt and economic decline, will lead to a massive radical change in this demographic. It is my fear that most of our men will not make it as the years worsen and more and more men are drawn into addiction and suicide. If not minimally, developing some mental defections from the continuous social exile and economic oppression. It is important to understand that many of our men have become highly depressed, nihilistic, or misguided altogether. It is in the isolation of the room of their grandparents' home or on the streets in which we are drawn in. We create social abnormalities that do not only isolate us from each other, but facilitate harmful lifestyles as we are not in the presence of each other to then build off of each other, both socially and physically, through speech and competition. It is in this light, however, due to such isolation, that many of our men have endured extreme social pressures, which led them to not only seek answers in their discouragement, but also to begin to build a enduring lifestyle, regardless of if they can economically or socially succeed. I advocate for this and recommend all of our men to take up personal study in fields of philosophy and politics, as it will be up to us to reconstruct this dying world that we live in. We must become warriors of the soul as well as warriors of the flesh. We must become philosophers in wisdom as well as in our action, and we must be great laborers and as such fathers of many children, as it is our duty. Many of us simply won't make it, and some of us will never have children, and some of us will die by our own hands. Some of us may even be killed in the streets. But it is for that reason that we have to become stronger in every aspect and become the ultimate man, regardless of if this world hates us. When the pillars come crashing down, whenever the money runs out, there will only be us and our kin who are willing to rebuild it. And by the grace of God, whatever being you may find faith in, we may yet survive the turn of the millennia.